Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's second video. We're going to have a look at weather for the next week to 10 days. For today's second video is going to take us into the third week of November, and actually we'll go a little bit beyond that with the extended GFS models. So, very mild at the moment, but got wet and windy weather working in from the Atlantic. Going to be a pretty wild sort of end to Friday, and Friday evening, going to be gale force winds and heavy rain as well. I'll talk you through the severe weather warnings I've got at the moment from the UK Met Office. Have a look at the Arctic and North Atlantic oscillations, and we'll have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days as well, as I say. And also at the end, there's going to be some different charts that you've not seen before, and you'll see how the ECMWF, in terms of its ensemble, is breaking down weather patterns in around 10 days' time or so. But I'll talk you through that towards the end of the video. We'll start off, though, by having a look at all of this wet weather that we've got piling in from the Atlantic at the moment. So you see it's very wet across parts of Northern Ireland now. We've got the red and the pink colours showing up there. You don't often see those on the radar picture. That's really torrential rain heading from the Republic into Northern Ireland. Very heavy rain stretching down the Irish Sea, just moving into parts of West Wales and southwestern England as well. We've got some showery bursts across western Scotland, and a little bit of light drizzly rain through parts of the Midlands and southeastern England too. But this is a real mass of wet weather that we've got out in the west. We can zoom in with this a little bit closer into Northern Ireland so you can see just how wet it is. That's proper downpour sort of weather there that we've got in most parts of Northern Ireland. When you see those sort of red, pink and even going to white colours, that's like as far as it goes on the scale when those white colours turn up. That is very, very torrential rain that's going on there. This radar picture is from the Weather Outlook, by the way. So that's a swathe of wet weather that's out in west. That's going to be crossing across the country through the course of this afternoon and this evening. Won't be giving us wet weather as that across eastern parts of the country, but we're all going to get a soaking either this afternoon or overnight tonight with some very strong winds as well. We have got weather warnings from the UK Met Office in force at the moment. So we've got Scotland on a yellow warning for rain and wind. Also parts of southwest Scotland down to the far northwest of England on a weather warning for rain and wind. Northern Ireland has a weather warning for rain and wind as well. And then down in the far southwestern part of the country down here, also through South Wales, southwestern England and along the south coast, we've got a yellow weather warning for rain and wind, and also an amber warning in western, southwestern parts of Wales. I can zoom in a little bit more so you can see the area that's been affected by that. So it's kind of like the far southwestern tip of Wales under an amber warning for rain, very torrential rain is likely there. So what the UK Met is saying about this, first of all, in terms of the amber warning for rain, they're saying further heavy rain this afternoon and this evening. This is in force between 1 o'clock and this afternoon and 11 o'clock tonight. They're saying homes and businesses are likely to be flooded, causing damage to some buildings, fast flowing or deep flood water, likely causing danger to life. Delays and some cancellations to train and bus services are likely. Spray and flooding probably leading to difficult driving conditions and some road closures. A good chance that some communities could be cut off by flooded roads, and also power cuts and loss of other services to some homes and businesses are likely with this wet weather. As far as the rain and wind warning is concerned, the yellow warning covering other parts of Wales, southwest England, also Scotland, Northern Ireland, and far northwest of England. They're saying that a spell of heavy rain and strong winds is expected during Friday. A few homes and businesses could be flooded. Spray and flooding on roads make journey times longer. Some delays to road, rail, air and ferry transport are expected. Delays for high-sided vehicles on exposed routes and bridges. Some short-term power loss of power and other services, and coastal routes, seafronts and coastal communities affected by spray and or large waves. So you see that obviously the amber warning is more serious than the yellow warning. You notice that the wording gets more serious, and in fact they do talk with the amber warning, they do talk about the risk of loss of life in terms of the fast flowing and deep floodwater causing danger to life. So you don't get that with the yellow warning. So you see, as the warnings increase in colour, the third warning is kind of like a red warning. That's very rare to see that, but as the warnings increase in their colour from yellow to amber to red, so the wording gets more serious, more critical. But it does look as though it's going to be a wild afternoon, a lot of wet and windy weather, and down in the south, or the southwest of Wales anyway, could be really, really wet as well. So take care if you're off out and about this evening, or this afternoon, or this evening, and overnight tonight. Right, Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast chart then. The black line here tells us where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red lines at the end where GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go, but in a prolonged positive phase of the AO, going right way back to the summer, which we can do with this black line going right way back to the early part of July. Where we are right now, so during the latter part of October we went negative with the AO. That was associated with the cold plunge and the northerly winds that we had at the end of October. Where we are right now is around ENSO neutral, forecasting the AO actually go a little bit negative again over the next few days, and in the more extended range with the GFS ensembles, so we lift them up a little bit around the middle part of November, but also we drop them off again as we go into the second half of November. So overall, it looks like the Arctic Oscillation is trending either neutral to rather negative overall. We do get that slightly more positive phase sometime around the middle part of November just here, but it's not particularly strongly positive. And overall, I think the Arctic Oscillation in terms of these GFS ensembles are more on the negative side of neutral going into the second half of October. So this tells us we haven't got a particularly raging sort of polar vortex at the moment, and we're likely to keep some anticyclonic influences going up over the North Pole. However, the NAO shows that we could be entering into a more positive phase with that. So again, same idea. Neither of these indexes are driving anything, the NAO or the AO. They don't drive anything. They just tell you what the atmosphere is doing, either in the Arctic or in the North Atlantic in terms of the NAO. The black line here shows that we've been in a prolonged positive phase of the NAO going back into the summer. We did go negative with the NAO in the second half of October. As the AO went negative, so too did the NAO. Again, that was associated with that colder weather that occurred at the end of October. Where we are right now, around neutral with the NAO, so we've got both the indexes around neutral. However, unlike what the Arctic Oscillation is being shown to do via the GFS ensembles, which is to go rather negative, the NAO looks like it's trending more and more positive. So we're going to have the two indexes, by the look of this anyway, we're going to have two indexes out of sync. The AO will be going into is in a more negative phase, likely to remain in a more negative phase through the second half of November, whereas the NAO looks like it's, after going through a slightly more negative period at the end of October, it looks like the NAO is going to be trending more positive, which means that we're going to have the Arctic and the North Atlantic fighting against one another a little bit, and that could create some real complications with the model output. So there's likely to be high pressure somewhere within the northern latitudes, but at the same time the Atlantic probably isn't going to let the cold air down from the Arctic into our part of the world. So two indexes kind of fighting against one another, and it will create quite a bit of model uncertainty. GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles looking like this the next couple of weeks. We'll look at Birmingham today. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Birmingham, starting off close to or a little bit milder than average with the upper air temperatures for the next few days. Next week, we see the upper air temperatures really lifting up, becoming very mild indeed with those upper air temperatures through the course of next week. And then as we go into the third week of November, just going into a final week of November, we are seeing a little bit of a cooling trend there, although, I have to say, there is a lot of scatter. So a lot of these ensemble members are keeping fairly mild upper air temperatures, but there are some that are going really quite cold with the upper air temperatures. I know a lot of you are waiting for the first ensembles watch of the season, by the way. That's where we go through all members of the all individual members of the GFS ensembles. I'm keeping an eye on it. If we look like we're going to get a push of very cold weather, and the GFS ensembles are showing that quite definitively, then I will bring you an ensembles watch. At the moment, haven't had enough within the GFS ensembles to justify doing an ensembles watch this early, but I am keeping an eye on it. There will be an ensembles watch as we get further into the winter. Of course, we do several of them through the winter. At the moment, I'm just keeping an eye on GFS ensembles. They do look quite split as we go into the final week of November. Precipitation-wise, a lot of dry weather to come. So after we get today's deluge, or tonight's deluge, out of the way, basically it's going to be pretty dry then into the second half of November. I mean, we do have some rainfall spikes here around the 19th of November, for example, but to be honest, considering this is sort of mid to late November, that's very dry even there. And beyond that, generally quite dry as well. So after today's wet weather, it looks like we're going yet again back to really dry conditions. We are not making up the rainfall deficit. So that's something to keep in mind for next year. At the moment, although we are getting these individually very wet days, we've got another one today, so we are bringing in rain bands at times, but to really make up the rainfall deficit that we've had since the late spring, through the summer and through the earlier part of the autumn, to really make it up, we've got to have day after day after day of consistent, steady rain. So this kind of very torrential rain that's occurring every 2 or 3 weeks, for example, is nowhere near enough to make up the rainfall deficit. So what we need to make up the groundwater, to make up rainfall deficit, to lift the rivers up, is to have consistent, day after day, general rainfall, not particularly torrential. It doesn't have to be particularly torrential, but just steady and consistent rain. We're not getting that. So it's still early days. We've got the winter to go, we've got the spring to go next year as well. But if we get to next summer and we are still in this generally pretty dry spell, then next summer things could start to get a little bit more serious in terms of this dry spell of weather. It's not serious at the moment. There's a long way to go for next summer, but we do have to start getting some consistent rainfall before, I would say, around May or June next year. So just have to wait and see how that plays out. Of course, we might get a very wet summer. You can never rule that out. We did, for example, in 2007. We had just a deluge of a summer. So even in the summer months, it could be next year that that's when it makes it up. You just never know. Right, this is how the GFS is looking in terms of the midnight run of the GFS. I'll talk you through the GFS and the ECMWF output next. So, starting on Monday, low pressure out to west of Scotland, bringing in the showery west to southwesterly winds. Through the course of next week, high pressure increasingly exerting its influence across central parts of Europe. So, we've gone to a week away, Friday 16th of November. And we've got high pressure sitting across central parts of Europe, bringing up these southerly winds. If you follow the isobars map, the air is originating from North Africa and the Mediterranean, so obviously very mild air is being pushed northwards, courtesy of this big ridge of high pressure that's sitting across central parts of Europe. So increasingly mild through the course of next week. The only caveat with that is, of course, we're close to high pressure. It's the middle of November, so we may start to generate some dense fog patches. The sun doesn't have the oomph in it now to burn fog away, so if we do get dense fog beginning to develop, it's more likely from Central Europe, but if we start to get dense fog beginning to develop in the second half of next week with these mild, moist southerly winds, then it is possible some of that fog could linger all day, and obviously that will limit the temperature potential a lot. So in any sunshine in around a week's time, we're probably looking at temperatures into the mid, possibly even upper teens Celsius. 17, 18 degrees is not out of question in prolonged sunshine in this kind of scenario in the middle of November. But conversely, if there's fog lingering all day, you're going to struggle to get temperatures up to 10 degrees. So it's one of those situations where it will depend greatly on how much sunshine there is. We're moving up towards day 10, and well, still we've got this high pressure to our east. It's gradually inching its way northwards though, starting to become a little bit more centred over Scandinavia. The vast majority of Europe is covered by this really extensive ridge of high pressure, by the way. Low pressure is deepening out in the Atlantic. That's trying to bring in westerly winds. What happened with the midnight run of the GFS is that eventually high pressure over Scandinavia did start to take over, and by the end of the run, Sunday 25th November, we are actually back in the winds into the east. We're starting to bring some quite cold air around the back of the high and across Europe like that. So eventually we do get into a much colder spell of weather after those warm southerly winds. We go much colder as we run up towards the final stages of the month. That's how the upper air temperatures are looking there. 6 o'clock run of the GFS starts very similar, with low pressure bringing showery conditions to the north and west, and then through the course of next week, high pressure again developing across central parts of Europe. The winds are going into the south, so it becomes increasingly mild, very dry. There is a possibility of some fog patches, though, into the second half of next week. In the more extended range, with this GFS run, this is up to day 10, Monday 19th of November, we don't really get that high pressure up towards Scandinavia like we did on the midnight run of the GFS. So what actually happens is that we eventually start to bring a more Atlantic flow through. That's how we look right at the very end of the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, with high pressure generally becoming centred more to the south of the UK, low pressure deepening to the north. That's trying to get us back into a rather more unsettled westerly flow, but for England and Wales there's still a lot of dry weather. It is more unsettled up in the north. No cold weather, of course, with that, as the wind remains either from the south or eventually it goes into the west. This is how the parallel run of the GFS is looking, 6 o'clock run. In terms of the parallel run. This will become the operational GFS in a few months' time. They always give the model an upgrade every year, and so this is the upgraded version of the GFS being running parallel with the operational run. It will become next year's GFS operational run. So we start again through next week with high pressure becoming increasingly influential. That's how we look on Saturday 17th of November, for example. High pressure is building through the UK. Notice it's much more centred towards the west of Europe, though, this area of high pressure, as opposed to being across central parts of Europe. So it's actually centred over the top of the UK, really, as we're getting up to Saturday 17th of November. That could well be bringing fog, maybe even a bit of an inversion, might even be bringing some night frost, I would have thought, by that point. Now, by day 10, we start to move that high pressure up towards Scandinavia, which is actually having a go at getting the winds into the east. So the parallel, 6 o'clock run of the parallel GFS does look quite a lot colder than the 6 o'clock run of the operational GFS. In the more extended range, again, we have this high pressure sitting around, or possibly a little bit to the north of the country. That's how we finish up on Sunday 25th of November. High pressure is well and truly in control, so it's very dry. This is obviously a much cooler, much colder situation, although the upper air temperatures for us aren't particularly cold. But notice we have pushed quite a bit of cold air across eastern and even some central parts of Europe. We're bringing in the -5 and the -10 isotherm. So if that just goes ever so slightly north there, if it just starts to inch out a little bit further north, then the cold air is waiting to our east, and that would be quite a notably cold end to November. So this final week to 10 days of November is still causing problems. Will we get the colder weather that we was expecting when we released the November month-ahead forecast? The operational GFS at 6 o'clock on the 6 o'clock run does not want to bring anything colder whatsoever, but the parallel GFS for the final week of November does hint at being quite a lot colder. ECMWF looks like this, so let's just move back a few days. So we go back to Tuesday 13th of November, and again it all looks rather showery with those westerly winds. But through the course of next week, high pressure increasingly exerting its influence. So a large area of high pressure is dominating there by Saturday, 17th of November, really under very strong anticyclonic conditions indeed. And look how far it stretches, right from the UK and Ireland out in west over towards the Europe-Russian border over in the east. That is many, many miles across Europe covered by that big area of high pressure. And again, you could well be getting an inversion occurring underneath that high pressure. You could well be getting frost and fog, especially across central parts of Europe, but possibly even in parts of the UK. That's how we finish up on day 10, which is Monday the 19th of November. By that point, the high pressure looks like it's centred kind of like across the Baltic area really up to the northeast. Low pressure is having a go at getting back in. That's beginning to stir the atmosphere up a little bit, so starting to turn things a little bit more unsettled and windier, or slightly windier, out in the west. But generally, again, still under quite anticyclonic conditions. These are the ECMWF ensembles for the build, so I included these in videos yesterday. I said we'll be seeing more of these in the videos to come. So this is for Holland, so it's a little bit to our east, but it gives you a rough idea of what the temperature is doing on the ECM. Quite close to the UK. So the red line here, that is the operational run of the ECMWF, what we was just looking at, essentially. And then this red dash line, that is the ensemble mean. So each individual ECM ensemble member is depicted by these green lines of spaghetti, if you like. Very similar to the way the GFS ensembles are worked out. Each individual ensemble member is one green line. The red line is the operational ECMWF, and then the red dash line is the ensemble means. That takes all of those individual ensemble members together and creates a mean line for all of them. Notice that under that high pressure, the operational run of the ECMWF did get very cold, actually. So it starts off around there, above 10 degrees, in the middle of next week. But by sort of the end of next week, look how the red line has dropped down. It's actually one of the coldest members at that point of the whole of the 50 plus ECMWF ensemble. It's we're almost getting ice days into built there, probably again from freezing fog, I would have thought. And even right at the very end, where things are beginning to stir up a little bit, that we saw by day 10, we do see that it is still quite cold, that operational ECMWF. It's a lot colder than the ensemble mean, again, which is the red dash line that's up here. Although it is cooling, the ensemble mean is cooling from there. We see that very gradually as we go along, it is dropping down to some degree. So again, I think there is signs of a bit of a cooling trend, turning colder through the final week to 10 days of November. But how extensive that will be, it remains to be seen. Now, we can use this. I haven't shown you this before. This is from the Icelandic Met Office. So this is breaking down all of those individual members of the ECMWF ensemble. So as I say, each one of these green lines that we see here is an individual ensemble member. And we can actually, from the Icelandic Met Office, we can actually see how those ensemble members break down into various scenarios. So this is at day 10, which of course at day 10, that's going to be Monday the 19th of November. And at day 10, we can see that out of the ECMWF ensembles, we have got 19 or 37.3% of ensemble members that have got this high pressure up to Scandinavia and are bringing in a proper easterly flow across Europe. So a lot of those members of the ECMWF ensembles are further north with that area of high pressure getting it up to Scandinavia. A further 17.6% of ensemble members within the ECMWF ensembles, again, has a high pressure up here, but it's a little bit more centred towards the north of Scotland. So NEEC is probably a little bit further southwards. But again, between those two ensemble members, fairly good agreement actually that the high pressure could get itself up towards Scandinavia. Then we've got another 9 ensemble members, 17.6%, that have the high pressure a little bit further southwards, so centering it from the UK towards central parts of Europe, for example. And then as we move down, remember this is at day 10, which is Monday the 19th. Then we've got a further 6 ensemble members that have the high pressure in that kind of position, almost over top of the UK. We've got another 5, which is 9.8%, that has a high pressure up towards the eastern part of the country, but is closer with the low pressure out in the Atlantic. So these ones are more unsettled, particularly for the UK and for Ireland too. So, and probably milder as well, bringing in more of a southerly flow as opposed to the easterlies that we see with those 19 ensemble members in the top left-hand corner. And then finally, we've got this scenario, which is only supported by 3 ensemble members, 5.9% of the ECMWF ensembles, which is again closer still with that low pressure to our southwest, and they are really quite unsettled, I would have thought, for the UK and for Ireland. These are 500 millibar heights, of course. Now I can take down to 360 hours. Of course, the operational ECMWF finishes at day 10. But a lot of these ensemble members actually extend out beyond day 10 and go up to kind of like 2 weeks away. So this is how they break down in terms of those ensemble members that go sort of 2 weeks out. We've got 31 of them, 60.8% at 360 hours, that have the high pressure up over Scandinavia and are bringing in these winds probably from an easterly direction. We do have a low pressure out to west southwest, so that's a little bit of a battle going on with those 31 ensemble members between high pressure to the northeast, low pressure down to the southwest. That high pressure could well by this point be bringing a lot of cold air across much of northern Europe. A further 12 ensemble members, which is 23%, has the high pressure centred somewhere between sort of Scotland and Norway. Low pressure much further away from us with these ECMWF ensemble members. Flow is in from the east, again probably cold and frosty with these ensemble members, and then there is a very small cluster, 8, which is 15.7% of the ECMWF ensembles, that actually has low pressure in control. So a few of them by sort of 2 weeks away are bringing low pressure in from off the Atlantic, with the ridge setting up in the middle of the Atlantic. So those ones obviously are a lot more unsettled, bringing in a westerly flow. And not overly warm, though, with a lot of those, I wouldn't have thought, because the air, again, comes from the northern Atlantic around that trough of low pressure. So those ones are really shaking things up. There's only 8 of them within the ensemble, ECMWF ensembles, but they're really shaking things up and turning things a lot more unsettled, very different solutions. Of course, with these models, the further out you go, the more unreliable they become. So that's how the ECMWF ensembles are shaping up at the moment. Generally, they're favouring high pressure to get up towards Scandinavia by day 10 and get the wind into the east. And a lot of them want to keep that going, actually, to around 2 weeks away, which is taking us in towards the final stages of November. And over time, they would be turning things increasingly cold. But that's all speculative stuff. In the next week to 10 days, what we can say is that it is going to be very mild for a time through the course of next week. This ridge building to our east and the low pressure to the west is going to draw the air up from the south. So it will be very mild for a time through the course of next week. But still this uncertainty about the final week to 10 days of November. Will we get things colder or not? There wasn't much sign of it with JMA Friday, but the ECMWF ensembles in particular are suggesting that we could well start to see something colder appearing from the east or the northeast the final week to 10 days of the month. We should wait and see on that. Never shown you those charts before. If you want to see more of them in the videos, please let me know via the comments if you would like to see how the ECMWF ensembles are breaking things down. So that's it for today's videos. Tomorrow we'll have a weekend forecast and we'll also have a look at the weather for next week, 10 days as well. Sunday we've got the 11th winter update. We'll also have another Christmas update on Sunday as well. So big weekend of updates coming up. Keep checking back for more. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.